What's going on, guys? It's fight season MMA, and today I want to talk about UFC 310, my official picks, predictions, bets, all that different type of stuff. Main event, Alexandre Pantoja going up against Kai Asakura. Kai Asakura's first fight inside the UFC after becoming the the Risen champion over in Japan. Also, co-main event, the O must go, Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Machado Garry. Featured bout, Gane versus Alexandre Volkov 2. We also got Bryce Mitchell on the card, Nate Landwehr, always a fun fighter. The prelims, some absolutely stacked prelims. Dominic Reyes versus Anthony Smith. Vicente Luque versus Gorimbo. Evloev versus Aljamain Sterling. And Randy Brown versus Brian Battle. These are some incredible fights on this UFC card. And even then, we got some great prelims as well. Joshua Van versus Curdy Durden. You got Michael Chiesa there. Clay Guida versus Chase Hooper. Kennedy Nzechukwu is back after UFC 308. This is a very deep UFC card. Might not have the star power that a lot of other cards have, but this card might be one of the best cards of the year. So I kind of want to talk about my picks on the card, who to watch, what you should be doing, and who you guys should place your bet on for these fights at UFC 310. But before we jump into the video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. That is the best way to help the channel grow. And while you're down there, please turn on the post notifications, just so you guys are always notified about UFC content releasing every single day. But without further ado, let's jump right into the video talking about UFC 310, giving my predictions, bets, and everything in between. Now, first, I kind of want to talk about with some of the fights, what fights to watch, what prospects to watch. I would say the prospect on the card is Chase Hooper. Chase Hooper is fighting Clay Guida at UFC 310 on the prelims. I think Chase Hooper's a great fighter. He's 14-3-1. In his last fight at UFC St. Louis, he absolutely destroyed his opponent. I look for Chase Hooper to possibly do that again to Clay Guida. Now, the fight of the night that I cannot wait to watch is the co-main event, Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Machado Garry. This is an incredible fight to watch, considering that Shavkat is 18-0. Garry is 15-0. As Chael Sonnen once said, the O must go, and that is an absolute banger of a fight. You have Shavkat's incredibly well-rounded style going up against Machado Garry, and truly, I think that it is going to be an incredible fight to watch, especially in this incredible card. First fight I want to start with is Randy Brown versus Brian Battle. Brian Battle is the favorite in this fight, and I have to agree. I do think that Brian Battle is going to win this one, but I don't know if it is as far apart as these odds are saying. Brian Battle is a -230 to Randy Brown being a +120. So I think putting a little bit of money on Randy Brown, this isn't like incredible odds to put money on, but Randy Brown, I do think that this fight could possibly win this fight. I think these odds should probably be a little bit closer to what, like 150 Randy Brown to, I don't know, 180 Brian Battle. I think it's probably about then. But both these guys, incredible fighters in the welterweight division. Brian Battle got a win in his last one. I also think that Randy Brown got a win in his last one. I think it was against Oleski dos Santos at UFC 302. I think this is a great fight. Probably one of the most fun fights on the card. I cannot wait to watch this between these two snipers. Brian the Butcher is an absolute killer out there. Absolutely got the win in Paris and flipped off the entire crowd, and one of the most savage moments in UFC history, in my opinion. Randy Brown, incredible striker, great art out there, truly is a very fun guy, but I do think that Brian Battle is going to be able to get the win on Randy Brown. Now, in the fight that I cannot believe is on the prelims, Evloev versus Aljamain Sterling. No matter how much you hate Aljo and no matter how much you may hate Movsar, this fight should 100% be on the main card. Evloev 18-0, Aljamain Sterling 24-4. Their last fights were both wins, obviously, for Movsar, but Aljo in his last one beat Calvin Kattar, his first fight up in the UFC featherweight division, and prior to that lost to Sean O'Malley in August of 2023. But I do think that this is going to be a very technical fight between these two. Now, this might not be a barn burner of a fight, but I do think that this is going to be an absolute war out there, considering that we got Movsar 18-0, great grappler from Russia. Got some good striking on him as well, but you have Aljamain Sterling, who is a massive bantamweight coming up to the featherweight division and looks a lot more filled out, and I think his actual proper weight class. Now, both these guys 5'7". Movsar is going to have a 1.5-inch reach advantage from 72.5 to 71, and the leg reach, Aljo is going to have a 3-inch leg reach. But who do I think is going to win this fight? I'm going to pick Aljamain Sterling by decision, and I do think the reason I'm picking Aljo is I think the experience is going to go in there and truly put him up into the top part of the featherweight division. I really am a massive Aljamain Sterling fan. I think he's the greatest bantamweight to ever fight in the UFC organization. That might be a hot take, but I don't think that there's really a polarizing best bantamweight. And I think that Aljamain Sterling's career career really gets overlooked inside the UFC. This would be a fight that I would 100% bet on. Aljamain Sterling is a plus 205 underdog compared to Evloev, who is a minus 250 favorite, but I do think that this fight is going to be very close between these two individuals. I think it's going to be Aljo by split decision to be exact, but I do think that Sterling is going to go in there and prove himself and why he is one of the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artists in the UFC currently. Now, Vicente Luque versus Themba Gorimbo. I'm going to go with Gorimbo. I think that Vicente Luque has looked a lot different after his Jeff Neal fight. He had a brain hemorrhage in that fight, and ever since he fought RDA, when he fought Joaquin Buckley, he's just looked like a former shell of himself. And not saying that Luque isn't a good fighter anymore, but I don't think he's at the level that what he is. I think Gorimbo is a very good fighter. I think he's one of the better welterweights in the UFC, and I think him getting this shot against Luque, yes, it might be on short notice, but I'm gonna favor Gorimbo in this one. You know, I think that he's 2 inches taller. He's got a massive leg reach of 5 inches, and he's also got a 1.5 inch reach advantage. And, you know, I think that he's going to go in there and kind of piece Luque up and ultimately get a second round TKO. You know, I think Gorimbo is a very good fighter. He's a very hard on himself, and I think that he's going to be a prominent staple in the welterweight division, possibly like a top 10 fighter for many years to come. Now, the headliner for the prelims is Dominic Reyes versus Anthony Smith, and this is a very close fight. Now, Dominic Reyes is a massive favorite in this one. He's a minus 340 to a plus 270. Now, I'm a big watcher of the Believe You Me podcast with Bisping and Smith has been going through a lot of things. He had a loss to his family or someone around there, so that could possibly impact this fight where he's been going through a lot. He's had a hard training camp. He hasn't been on the podcast for a very long time, but I do think that I'm actually going to pick Anthony Smith in this one. I think that he's going to win by decision against Dominic Reyes. You know, Reyes is a good fighter. Don't get me wrong. I could 100% see Reyes going in there and knocking out Smith in this one. They're the same height. Dominic Reyes has got a 1 inch reach advantage, and Anthony Smith has a 0.5 leg reach advantage. But I do think the grappling is going to be the biggest difference in this one. I think if Anthony Smith is coherent, goes in there and tries to get this fight to the ground, I think he is going to ultimately win this one. Not in dominant fashion, but I do think he's going to be able to get a unanimous decision victory over someone like Dominic Reyes. This fight is either going to be an absolute barn burner or it's going to be absolutely dead, but I do think that Smith is going to get the win. Moving on to the main card, Nate the Train Landwehr versus Defying Choi. I do got Nate Landwehr in this one. He is an absolute bad man from Tennessee. Nate the Train is one of your favorite fighters. He's so fun every time he steps in there. You know, I think Nate the Train is going to go out there, wear on Defying Choi, and just ultimately get a TKO finish in the second round. Not saying that this is going to be, you know, some absolute long-lasting fight or anything, but I do think that this is going to be one of the better fights of the night. It's going to be an absolute barn burner. Nate Landwehr is not in a fight where he ever survives. I feel like every single fight that he's in, like the Dan Ige fight, the last fight that he had, Nate Landwehr is an absolute monster, and every time he goes out there, he's going to draw blood, and I do think that this is going to be the same for this fight as well. Now, this fight on the main card is actually crazy to me, but it's Gracie versus Bryce Mitchell. I got Bryce Mitchell in this one. He's a minus 800 favorite. I mean, Gracie looked awful in his last MMA fight that I remember. I don't remember when he fought last, but the last fight I can recollect was him versus Charles Jourdain as the main card opener for UFC 288, and this dude was crawling, butt scooting across the octagon, and that was something so sad to see. I mean, he's going to get absolutely pounded by Bryce Mitchell. Now, if Mitchell goes in there and grapples with him, he might actually get submitted because the Gracie family has got some great jiu-jitsu, but Bryce Mitchell takes this the way he needs to take it. He's going to win this fight. He's got a 1 inch height advantage, 1 inch leg reach advantage. He's got it's tied in the regular reach advantage. I think Bryce Mitchell's got this one pretty confidently. This would 100% be a fight that I'm confident betting on. For the featured bout on the card, we got an absolute banger. Heavyweight division, Cyril Gane versus Alexandre Volkov. Now, this fight has a lot of implications going down the road. This is probably going to be a #1 contender match for the winner to fight either Tom Aspinall or the winner of Tom Aspinall versus John Jones, or if John Jones retires, fights someone else for the UFC heavyweight strap. So probably the next fight for one of these guys who wins, I do think it's going to be a heavyweight title shot. Cyril Gane, 12-2. Alexandre Volkov, 38-10. Both guys are on a little bit of a win streak. Volkov, I think, is on at least a 2-fight win streak, being Tuivasa and Sergey Pavlovich. Cyril Gane is on a 1-fight win streak, beating Sergey Spivak on his last one at the UFC Paris main event in September 2nd of 2023. Cyril Gane has had a pretty long layoff, whereas Alexandre Volkov doesn't fight that often. He fought in September or 2023, I believe, and fought once June 2024 in Saudi Arabia. But who do I think is going to win this fight? Now, Alexandre Volkov has a 3-inch height advantage at 6'7". He's an absolute monster out there. Cyril Gane is no small man himself, 6'4". Volkov has a 1-inch reach disadvantage to Gane, who is 81 inches, and the leg reach for Volkov is absolutely insane, 47.5 inches to 42 inches for Gane. But I do think I favor Ciryl Gane in this one by a tad. I would not be opposed to put money on Alexandre Volkov in this one. Volkov is a plus 275 underdog, where Gane is a minus 345 favorite, and I do think that this fight is going to be almost a coin flip. These two have fought before. Ciryl Gane, I think, won every single round on 2 judges' scorecard and won 4 out of the 5 rounds on 1 judges' scorecard. This is a 3-round bout. I think this fight is going to be a lot closer. Volkov looks a lot better than he ever has. He's one of the most underrated fighters in the UFC, but I'm going to say Ciryl Gane just because he won the last one, and I do think it's going to be very close. Like I said, almost toss-up, 120 probably to 110 or something like that. But I do think Ciryl Gane's kind of incredible footwork, his really good striking. If Volkov can grapple, Volkov's going to win this fight, but I do think that Gane's been improving his grappling a lot. I do think that Gane is going to go out there and be able to dance around and get a 3-round decision victory over Alexandre Volkov. Now, in the co-main event, Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Ian Machado Garry. The O must go. 18-0 Shavkat versus 15-0 Ian Garry. Title eliminator, UFC welterweight division. As we all know, Belal Muhammad was supposed to fight Shavkat Rakhmonov. Belal pulled out with a bone infection in his toe, had to get surgery, out for 6 weeks. Ian Machado Garry stepped in to keep Shavkat on the card. Now, these two are going to be an absolute crazy war with one another. Shavkat has a 2.5-inch reach advantage at 77 to 74.5. Their leg reach is the same, but Ian Garry has a 6'3" frame compared to Shavkat's 6'1" frame. Now, I kind of made a video saying that everyone is counting out Ian Garry in this one. He's a plus 295 underdog compared to Shavkat Rakhmonov as a 375 favorite, which I do think is absolutely crazy. I think that this is going to be a very good fight, and I see 100% a world where Ian Garry wins. But I see more worlds where Shavkat Rakhmonov wins. You know, I hate betting against Ian Garry because I know how good of a fighter he is. Like, he is that good. But Shavkat, 18 wins, 18 finishes, submitted his last 3 opponents, has as many KOs as subs inside the UFC, or about the same. He's an absolute demon out there, man. Like, he is so good, and everyone overlooks Shavkat as probably one of the best welterweights right now. He's 100% top 15 pound for pound inside the organization. He is one of those guys. Now, if Ian Garry can pass this test, that is an absolute star-studded win that you could get over one of the UFC's best fighters currently. You know, Shavkat has such a bright future in front of it, as well as Ian Garry, but this is one of the most exciting fights the UFC could ever put on, especially in this situation. Like I said, the O must go. One of the first times in UFC history where 2 undefeated fighters are fighting one another outside of a title shot. And really, this is going to be an absolutely game-changing move for anyone's career, but I do favor Shavkat in this fight by a tiny bit. I think he can go in there and wrestle with Garry. I think he can go in there and strike with Garry if he mixes it up. Garry is 100% a better, cleaner, more technical striker than Shavkat, but once Shavkat implements the takedowns, keeps Ian Garry guessing, I think Gary's going to have a very tough time in being able to find Shavkat's chin when he's having to think about all different types of things like defending the takedown and on throwing strikes and all that different type of stuff. Now, the odds, 100%, do not bet on Shavkat in this fight. Minus 375, I'm not confident that he's going to go out there and wipe the floor with Garry. I could 100% see Ian Garry going out there and starching Shavkat because he keeps his chin a little bit high. But I do think that this is a great fight. It's my fight of the night for a reason. It's the fight that I cannot wait to watch. Probably one of the most excited I've been to watch a fight this year in 2024. And genuinely, I do think Shavkat Rakhmonov is going to go out there and beat Ian Garry by 3rd round submission. Now, in the main event, Alexandre the Cannibal Pantoja versus Kai Asakura. Now, Pantoja, as we all know, has like 9 wins of the top 15 UFC fighters right now, or top 10, some crazy number. He's on a crazy win streak, and he's defended his title 2 times already, one against Royval and one against Steve Erceg. Kai Asakura is a fighter who came over from Rizin. This is his first time inside the UFC. Now, it says his record is 0-0-0, which I cannot believe is true. I don't know if he's had any other fights. I don't know if that was straight kickboxing or whatnot, but Alexandre Pantoja's record, 28-5. He's an absolute amazing fighter inside the UFC flyweight division, and I don't know much about Kai Asakura to go in there. I know he's a great striker. He's an incredible striker, got some great kicks, great knees, but I don't know how his ground game goes. And that's the biggest thing that I look at between these two fighters. Pantoja is going to go in there and be able to wrestle on the ground. He is that good on the ground. He's one of the best UFC jiu-jitsu specialists. He's a great fighter. He was able to go and dominate Royval over 5 rounds. He eked out a very close fight against Steve Erceg. eked out a very close fight against Brandon Moreno, but Pantoja is that guy. He's got an iron chin. He's got great striking. He's got great grappling, and I see him going in there and beating Mr. Kai Asakura. I'm going to say by second round submission, but I could also see this being a 5-round decision as well. I think that there's a big question mark with Kai Asakura. I think that's going to be the hardest thing to really predict about this fight. I don't know how amazing he is in the MMA context. I know he was a risen champion. I know he's an incredible striker, but going up against one of his hardest fights inside the UFC for his first fight, I just don't see a world where Kai Asakura can really beat Alexandre Pantoja, a seasoned veteran inside the UFC flyweight division, someone who's been champion for a very long time, one of the most dominant champions currently. But really, Pantoja is going to go in there and show off his work. American Top Team, that gym is incredible down in Coconut Creek, Florida, and I genuinely think that Pantoja is going to go out there and submit Kai Asakura in the second round. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Fight Season MMA, and please let me know what you think down below in the comment section about all these different fights on this card. Pantoja versus Asakura, Shavkat versus Machado Garry, Gane versus Alexandre Volkov, other fighters, Aljamain Sterling versus Evloev, Brian Battle versus Randy Brown, and so on and so forth. I think UFC 310 is really being overlooked because it is headlined by the flyweights. Not a lot of people like to watch the flyweights, but I do think that this is one of the deeper fights on the UFC card. I think betting on this card is really hard. I think that there's some good odds, but I also think that there's some really bad odds as well. I would kind of avoid betting on this card altogether because I think that these are some very good fights where both fighters could truly win, especially in some of these fights like Sterling and Evloev. I don't know. Brian Battle, Randy Brown, I'm not 100% sure. Dominic Reyes versus Anthony Smith, I'm not 100% sure on this one. Gane versus Volkov, I could see Volkov winning there. Shavkat and Garry stay away from, Pantoja, I think will get the win, but this card is a very good card, a lot of good fights, and I cannot wait to watch these guys go in UFC 310 December 7th at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. One of the best fight cards to end out the year as 2024 wraps up. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Fight Season MMA. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you guys enjoy the UFC content. And while you're down there, please turn on the post notifications just so you guys can always be notified about UFC content releasing every single day. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you guys very soon with more UFC content and news.